What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video on Fantasy Football Scout. And today we're back doing transfer trends, looking ahead to Gameweek 28. And in these videos, we look at some of the highest players kind of brought in transfer-wise, and also taken out and discuss whether it's a good thing, why it might be happening, kind of fixtures that are upcoming and that kind of thing. So we're going to start off with Bruno Fernandes. Man United, only 3 games, already gone up to 8.2 million from 8 million. 108,866 transfers in, so quite a few already this week. It's only Monday at the time we're recording this. I think this one's probably a little bit unsurprising. We know from previous seasons when a Man United player does well, especially a new one kind of on the block, they quickly increase in price, the transfers rush in, and Fernandes is no exception. Obviously, he debuted against Wolves a few weeks ago. Like I said, already up to 8.2 million. And the match against Watford was great for early adopters. I had him for this match personally. 14 points, assist, goal, and 3 bonus points was really decent. And now we know he's more than likely on penalties. There didn't seem to be any discussion going on there. He just got the ball, went for it. And obviously we'll have to wait and see next time what happens. But he's got a pretty good record, so there's no kind of reason why he wouldn't be on the next one. And basically the main penalty taken out. Obviously Rashford wasn't on the pitch because he's injured, so he might have a say in that as well. But it's not something we really have to worry about for a little while because Rashford could be out for the rest of the season. So Fernandes looks pretty good for penalties. And Man United get quite a few as well. They've already had 10 this season in the league, which is the most. I think Man City are second on 7. So already quite a few, and no reason why they can't get more before the season is out. There's obviously fixtures to maybe be concerned about. So Everton away, Man City at home, Spurs away is probably not the greatest 3 set of fixtures that you're going to see on any season ticker or fixture ticker. And then it's Sheffield United at home, but that's probably going to be a blank in Game Week 31. Obviously, we're still yet to know that for sure, but it looks pretty likely. So the fixtures aren't fantastic, but I think circumstances are kind of dictating the transfers in, even though the fixtures aren't fantastic. I think Everton probably doesn't look so bad on paper, especially when they've just conceded 3 goals to Arsenal. Man City and Spurs, Man United have done okay against both those teams already this season, and that was without Fernandes, although with Rashford. Obviously, Rashford's quite a big miss to that attack. The 3 goals against Watford is good. Obviously, the teams they're about to play is much more difficult, but Man United seem to have found some form. Like I said, they've done okay in the bigger fixtures so far this season. And with Bruno there, hopefully he can help that even further. And also, he doesn't have a blank this week, so a lot of players, whether they've planned or not, might be stuck with midfielders without fixtures this week. So Kevin De Bruyne, Mahrez, Grealish, and players like that. If you've got like Sheffield United midfielders like Fleck, maybe it's obviously quite a lot of money to upgrade to Bruno Fernandes, but it could be happening. That could be another reason. So I don't think necessarily the Russia transfer would usually be there for those fixtures, but I think the circumstances are kind of dictating that, and also his record for penalties is also very, very, very good. And his stats aren't that bad so far. I'd like to see him getting into the box more and shooting more in the box. But 10 shots in total in 3 games. Only 2 of those in the box. So hopefully he can start increasing that and getting forward more. But he's also created 7 chances as well. We know he's monopolising set pieces too. So kind of free kicks, corners, and penalties it looks like as well. So I think he's a really good buy. I can see why people are buying him. I don't think he's necessarily must-have or anything like that. But no blank this week and a couple of winnable fixtures potentially over the next 3. Penalties, only 8.2 million as well. What's not to like, really? So Jamie Vardy is next up for transfers in. Now, interestingly, he was on this video last week, but for transfers out, obviously was playing Man City. Maybe some of those managers are reversing. Perhaps some people were waiting for the good fixture run to come from Game Week 28. But either way, he's had almost pretty much the same amount of transfers in this week. At the time of recording the video, as we had transfers out last week at the time of recording the video, which is interesting. It is worth noting he is still being transferred out by managers though, so about 30,000 managers have also transferred him out. So his net is not that high, but he is being transferred in quite a bit. And that's probably unsurprising given the fixtures that are coming. The one plus obviously we have with Jamie Vardy versus a lot of other players is we know he's going to play week in, week out. We know he's going to play for 90 minutes despite the formation. We know he's on penalties, etc. So he obviously looks good in that regard. You know, if you're going to bring players in, obviously you want them to play, especially when there's other players that are blanking and maybe not guaranteed to play. Obviously, Vardy is nothing of the sort. He's definitely going to play week in, week out. Now, we saw Rodgers against Man City play a different formation. They played with kind of 5 at the back. Now, that could have been just because it was Man City. It also could have been because they were kind of without all their defensive midfielders. Indeed, he's still injured. Chowdhury was suspended, which obviously didn't help. But it doesn't matter because Vardy's going to play regardless. Whereas we saw other players like Perez and Barnes, who probably some people have been looking to kind of bring in Game Week 28. They didn't play against that Man City side. Now, obviously, going forward, that might change. Chowdhury back being able to play now. They might revert to the normal formation they've been using for most of the season, and Barnes and Perez might be fine. And to be fair, when Barnes came on, he did look really good against that Man City side for the 45 minutes he played. But obviously with Vardy, like I said, you get a nailed-on player. We all know that. I think if you're ever going to regain form, then the fixtures they've got coming up are pretty decent for that to happen. So Norwich away, Villa at home. We know both those sides conceding quite a few chances, especially Aston Villa. That home game looks really good. Potentially even captaincy option in that week. Watford away and Brighton at home. So I don't think you can say these transfers in are a mistake. I think early on in the season, he looked almost essential. I definitely don't think that's the case now. I think, although Ings has been blank, and I still think he looks quite good. Jimenez for sure, even Jota if Wolves are going to keep that kind of 3-5-2 formation. So there are other strikers. Calvert-Lewin, most shots in the box over the last 4 matches out of all attackers as well. So there are spaces for other strikers that aren't Jamie Vardy. But if you're going to take a punt on someone returning to form, they are the fixtures to do it. I think underlying stats-wise have not been great. 5 shots in the box over the last 4 matches is pretty low for a striker. You'd want to see him get more chances again. You'd expect those chances to come in the fixtures. So I think this is a pretty good transfer, and one I'm considering myself, Firmino to Vardy maybe, but given Firmino's underlying stats, playing for Liverpool and the form he's been in, it's not something I'm probably going to do, but it is a bit of worry not having him this week. He could be a captaincy option against that Norwich side, and yeah, I quite like the transfer, and I just don't think it's massively necessary this week if you don't already own it. You've probably got strikers that are doing just as well, even if the fixtures aren't quite good. There's some good strikers in good form that are cheaper as well. Once called Lord Lundstram, I think it's probably about time we just have to call him John now. 72,514 transfers out for John Lundstram. Not looking good for him right now. Hasn't started any of the last 4 matches. Even in the last match, the one before they've just played this weekend, he came on, got the goal against Bournemouth and won the game. Still didn't get on the pitch as a first 11 in that Sheffield United team against Brighton this weekend. So it doesn't look like he's going to get his place back anytime soon. I think if you're still clinging on to the hope that he will, is probably clutching at straws at this point. Neil, who does the team news video every week with me on Friday, has said this week in, week out for the last few weeks that Chris Wilder doesn't really change his first 11 that often. Obviously, they bought in Berger, who's done quite well. I think he was the record signing as well, so it's probably going to take some time for Lundstram to get back in. It probably have to be an injury or something at this point. Doesn't look like he's going to be starting anytime soon. There's not really anything to say that he will, unless, of course, Chris Wilder comes out and says that, which seems unlikely. So I think if you've got him, I've said this before, if you've got him at 4 million and you're just going to use him as bench fodder, there's not really necessarily a massive need to sell him. But obviously, if you want that kind of position to be used by someone useful that actually plays football, then I can see why 72,000 managers have transferred him out. And obviously, if you've got him at 4 million, he's gone up to 5. You've still got 4.5 million to spend. So you've made some money, cash out while you can, and get a player in that's going to do well. I think in terms of replacements, we talked about cheaper options before. I think one's around that kind of price, but maybe a little bit more expensive. So Wolves, Bolly or Saiss look pretty good. I think Doherty as well, but obviously he's quite a bit more money. Spurs away is quite a tough fixture. But they are without Son and Kane, so potentially there could be a clean sheet there for Wolves. And obviously, they have done really well for clean sheets since Bolly was back as well. Saiss was a bit cheaper, and if you look at goal threat for the last kind of 3 fixtures where Bolly was back in the side, Saiss is beating him for goal attempts as well. So potentially for a little bit less money and more goal threat, Saiss could be the one to go for. Obviously, Bolly's 100% nailed. I think it doesn't really look like there's any reason why Saiss would lose his place at the moment. They've not got Bennett. He's on loan, I think it is, to Leicester. And then Donker, who was playing as a centre-back when Bolly was injured, has obviously been taken out the side and mostly played in central midfield when everyone was fit anyway. It's kind of a more defensive midfielder. So if I could go, I've got Bolly. If I could go again, I'd probably go for Saiss. I just think the goal threat looks good. Not that Bolly doesn't have any goal threat himself, but in terms of kind of the amount of shots they've had since he's been back in the side, Saiss is winning there. Obviously, if you want to go Sheffield United defence, you've got Egan and Stevens. Stevens showed his underlying stats, attacking-wise, at the weekend by scoring. But obviously, they do blank this week, so they're not really an option this week. But maybe next week you could go for them too. Or it could be time to go back onto Leicester defence. Just talked about their fixtures for Jamie Vardy. They are turning and they do look quite good. Maybe a cheeky punt on someone like Johnny Evans. He's got a bit of goal threat in himself. I think he's 5.2 million, so he's a bit more expensive, obviously, than Lundstram. But if you've got a bit of spare change, he could be a bit of a differential. I think a lot of people got off the Leicester defence and might be time to go back on. But obviously, Ndidi is a big miss. Talked about this before, both defensively and attacking-wise, he's a huge miss to Leicester. So hopefully he can come back soon. If not, Chowdhury's there, and I'd expect them to revert back to their normal formation. And lastly, we've got Sergio Agero, 115,404 transfers out already. Basically, huge frustrations if you're an FPL manager who owns Sergio Aguero this week against Leicester. 0 points after the penalty miss, not good at all. And obviously now we don't even know if he's still going to be on penalties, because it was between him and Gundogan according to Pep. Maybe De Bruyne takes them now, who knows. They've got to do something because they've just missed too many. And Aguero, I don't know, it always felt like he was a good penalty taker. And for whatever reason, it's not gone right recently. And because of that 0 points he got this week, he's now averaging 2 points per match over the last 4 games, which is just not good enough. And obviously you can see why managers are taking him out. There's a blank game week this week, then it's Man United away. And look, maybe Man City will win that game, but I wouldn't expect it to be massively high scoring. Burnley at home looks good, then Chelsea away and Liverpool at home. Probably also not going to be that high scoring, I would say. And obviously, out of those kind of 4 fixtures after the blank, you don't even know if Aguero is going to start every single one of them as well. And for his price, I think when you couple the kind of fixtures, the fact that he might not even have penalties anymore, and his price tag, you can kind of see why managers are getting off him. And I think it's a probably good time to do it. I think if you kept him for Leicester, that was fair enough. And obviously, if that penalty had gone in, it's a totally different story in your feelings around Aguero. But it just looks like it's time for him to go right now. So, interestingly, I've not put him on the video because he blanks this week, but Aubameyang has already been bought in by more than 60,000 managers who maybe haven't noticed that he doesn't play this week. But obviously, after this week, West Ham at home and a good fixture on for Arsenal, and obviously we've seen him be consistent all season, Aubameyang, when it comes to scoring goals. He could be a nice swap for Aguero. Not this week, of course, but maybe next week. And I still think, apart from Aubameyang, most of the good picks, especially expensive picks like Mane and Salah, are in midfield. You've got De Bruyne there as well. Fernandes looking pretty good too, as we've already discussed. So I personally am still okay with having a pretty cheap forward line. I've got Firmino personally. He could be downgraded to Calvert-Lewin, for example. I still think Ings, even though he's blanked quite a bit, looks good. And Jimenez, obviously, too. And maybe even Jota, like I've said as well. So there's still lots of cheap options up front where I don't think Aguero kind of justifies his price right now. I am pretty tempted to go for Aubameyang, so I'm not saying you should go without a premium striker at all. You just obviously can't bring him in this week. Or you can, but you're not going to get very far with him. So I think this is a good set of transfers out as long as you haven't gone to Aubameyang. And yeah, I just think the fixtures, the price tag, it's just not there for Aguero, and I can see why he's being transferred out. So that is a good move. Otherwise, that video, we will leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed it. They're the 4 players that we were going to talk about. If you've got any comments to make about whether kind of the transfers being made in or out or a mistake, let me know in the comments below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, much appreciated, and subscribe if you're new around here. Click the notification bell so you know when all the other videos go live. There's loads of content coming out on Fantasy Football Scout, so definitely worth subscribing. Otherwise, I'll catch you next week for Transfer Trends, and we will see you later.